It's Sunday, January 10th, 2016, and this is the Product Mentor Talk. Today we're joined by one of our mentors, Marc Wendell, Director of Product at Frankly Media, to lead a talk on Not My Job, something I think many product people can relate to. And so let me just briefly explain the format for those of you joining us, perhaps for the first time today. In the room and along the bottom of your screen, you see mentors and mentees that are in the current session of the Product Mentor program. Mentors and mentees are paired up one-on-one for a period of 6 months to help make better product decisions, better product people. And so what we're going to quickly do is just go around the room for some introductions. And so I'm going to start with the first person, the person closest to me. And Rachel, introduce yourself and whether or not you're a mentor or a mentee.
Great. I'm Rachel Kaur, and I'm part of Mark Cuban Companies, and I'm here to listen to my awesome mentor speak and do a great job today.
Great. And let's go to Mateo.
Hi, everybody. I'm a product manager at Collective Health there in San Francisco, and I'm a mentee in the program.
And Mark.
So I'm Marc Wendell. I'm Director of Product at Frankly Media, and have a background in user experience, product development, and as Rachel mentioned, I'm glad to see that my mentee has showed up on a Sunday to see me talk.
Lonnie?
Yeah, I'm Lonnie Rosenbaum, a product manager at a company called Booker based in New York, and I am a mentee in the program.
And Lamia.
Hello, Lamia, product manager at Sydney in Laureate, Australia. Yeah, great to first time participate at this talk.
And I'm going to skip over Jens, who's having some technical difficulties. I'm going to just have Nis, who just joined us, introduce himself, and then we'll move forward.
Hey, I'm Nis, product manager at Alpha UX. Sorry for some of the background noise I got here.
No background noise, but man, that was like Darth Vader introduction right there. Very deep. So and I am Jeremy Horn, aka the Product Guy, and I'll be moderating the questions today. And so as the questions come in, whether they're from the room or really from the rest of the internet, we open it up to everybody. As the questions come in, I'll pass them along to Mark in fairly near real time. For the more general, generic sort of questions, or those kind of questions that get asked that I generally answer at the end, I'm going to save those questions for the end of the talk, and myself or Mark will answer them. So once again, keep the questions coming in to theproductmentor.com/live. But with all that said, let me hand it off to Mark to take it away.
Thanks, Jeremy. So I'm going to talk to you today about a topic called Not My Job. It's something that I've actually, it's, in my opinion, invariable that at some point you're going to be asked to take on responsibilities that might be outside of the traditional sort of product management remit. And this could do good things for you, it could do bad things for you. I've had certain experiences in my career. But just to set the table, what this talk will not be is sort of an existential argument about what the natural boundaries of product management, the product management role is. I'm also not going to sort of get into, what a product manager should do or shouldn't do, what sort of the clean lines in the sand kind of are or need to be. What I am going to focus on, though, is tactics that you can use to manage sort of this expansion of a product manager's role in order to sort of optimize for growing your core product management skills as much as possible. So, two disciplines that I have had a lot of interaction with in my career are program management or project management, if you do, and product marketing, right? So program management, obviously worries about resources, project plans, and stuff like that, and product management, product marketing also, they focus on bringing products to market and positioning and all of those sort of traditional tasks. And you're going to see me refer to these two disciplines because I've worked in a lot of matrixed organizations where you have cross-functional teams sort of contributing to shipping products and maintaining products. So this is just sort of, where I'm coming from. But in general, as a product manager, you are a stakeholder to the other disciplines, right? You shouldn't be someone who's a product marketer, moonlighting as a product manager. You shouldn't really be focused on project delivery and stuff like that as your main remit as a product manager. But you are stakeholders to that process. And it's important, we're going to get into this a little bit more further in the presentation, but it's important to sort of acknowledge, what a stakeholdership is versus, what a disciplinary role is. But invariably, sometimes product management looks like this, right? So you see sort of different roles coming together to form sort of this amorphous role, and there's just this general sort of breadth that happens that will happen in product management sort of experiences, and this happens for a number of reasons. The first one is necessity, right? So if you're working at a startup, you might just sort of need to fill a bunch of other sort of gaps in the product management, pipeline or the world that might, be defined as product management in that role. Also too, different changes can occur in organizations, where product management or some of the other disciplines sort of get moved around in terms of hierarchy and reporting lines, which can change sort of the dynamic or some of the tasks associated with your role. But something else that tends to happen too is product management really means something different to every organization. Sometimes it's it's very broad, the definition of product management. Sometimes it's very narrow. And there could be very subtle differences or very significant differences depending on your organization. The other thing too is organizations themselves are going to go through different cycles of their development. Sometimes there's going to be focus on, laser focus on certain products. Year to year priority is going to change. Sometimes you're entering new markets. Sometimes you're sundowning old, legacy products, and that sort of sense of organizational drift can also have an impact on what sort of the core role of the product manager is. And also too, abrupt transitions, force adjustments, stuff like that, people moving on, can sometimes lead to product managers sort of playing the role of other disciplines on a temporary basis. So again, like anything else, this is something that I think is invariable, right? It's going to happen to the point where you're going to find yourself saying, is this sort of what I should be focusing on as a core competency as a product?
Mark, I'm going to jump in quickly. We're getting some weird static and feedback from your mic.
All right.
I'm not sure if you're maybe bumping into something or doing something with your, but we're hearing a lot of static and you're kind of fading in.
Anything better now?
It's only when you talk. Right now, it's recycling my audio back to me. But just wanting you to be aware of that in case maybe you were bumping into something or something was shaking on your side. But continue and let's see if it can help fix itself.
All right, great. Thanks, Jeremy. Anyhow, some of the good things about this role expansion. One of the great things really is that you will get to hone sort of tertiary skills, right? And this will deepen your knowledge of the overall sort of product machine. You also get exposure to a lot more disciplines, and again, in matrixed organizations where, where I'm sort of the format that I'm most familiar with, this could create a lot of opportunities for mobility and things of that nature for you. The other thing is when you're sort of responsible for a larger share of the input, then you get credit for more of the output. And what I've seen is particularly useful for product managers. It'll give you opportunities to accelerate your career. And obviously you should capitalize on those, but it's all about sort of the management of that process. The bad thing is it sort of dilutes your ability to focus on product management at times, right? Because you're sort of applying your skills to different disciplines and not really sort of devoting as much time as you should be to really growing sort of the core competencies that it takes to be an effective product manager. It could also lead to just general workload increases, just the ebb and flow of that sort of demand cycle. But also, too, the more that you're responsible for sort of on the input side, then the greater your overall accountability is to the product success. So I want to walk you guys through a couple of interesting case studies from my own career. So I worked at a company that was a large multinational corporation, publicly traded, headquarters and shared across the United States and Europe. They had, the origin of this company goes back something like 100 years. They're really an authority in what they do. They manage to sort of avoid disruption and sort of disintermediation of their business models very, very well. So that set the bar significantly high for me in this particular scenario. And this company was sort of going through, the division I worked in was sort of going through a reinvention where, they were typically very much a B2B company, but what they were really looking to do is sort of cut their buyers out of the equation and go directly to their users. So this was a very big paradigm shift for them, and it also meant building sort of competencies on the B2C side that they hadn't built yet. And I had the fortunate opportunity to be a member of the team that was building this whole new suite of products aimed at a specific user rather than sort of the traditional B2B sort of buyer-centric sort of story. But it was a great experience, and it led me to product management in a couple of interesting ways. So this is sort of the general trajectory that I took to become a product manager, but I encountered just a lot. I really had to take on a lot of different sort of tertiary responsibilities to get there. So when I started, I actually started as a staff user experience designer. My background and my sort of origin into the product world comes from user experience, and I worked on a lot of the sort of analytical side of user experience. So user understanding, user interviews, contextual inquiry, building skills that actually are very, very applicable to the product management discipline. And if you're interested, you can go on YouTube on the group channel, and I actually did a talk on user experience for product managers. But circling back around from that little tangent, I cut my teeth really working on user experience at Columbia University, which gave me a lot of exposure to a specific content type. And at this new company, we were building a product that represented a very different content class than the company was used to working with. And it led to them sort of trying to use their current platform to harvest this content and manage this content, but it was kind of like trying to jam a square peg into a round hole. But what quickly happened, given my role on the design team, was I was sort of quickly identified as having a great deal of knowledge in this specific content type. So what that invariably led to was me being lent to the product team. But I wasn't really doing sort of disciplinary product management work per se. I was sort of in charge with coming up with essentially a content strategy and operations plan. In terms of harvesting this this specific type of content, building or sort of augmenting the core platform in order to deal with this this new type of content. And what that ultimately led to was it became my responsibility to really provide the overall validation for this concept, right? Everything's sort of stitched together. So, I was there, from the very, very beginning of the product ideation sort of phase. I contributed as a UX designer originally, which led to me having sort of a pretty intimate understanding of this user. And then I sort of got to add content to that whole mix, and it was really, really great exposure. And just to sort of round off the story, what ended up happening is they said, you know what, at this point, what you're doing has a lot more to do with product management than it does sort of traditional user experience. So that became my opportunity to sort of formally cross that river from UX into product management. So in this case, it led to some pretty significant growth opportunities for me. I became sort of a product manager proper. I had opportunities, internal sort of learning and development opportunities that really helped me hone the core skills that I used to sort of start my product career. And it gave me a great deal of visibility across a number of different organizations. And I've always found in large organizations, your internal network has a lot of impact on your development, and it's important to sort of work your internal development when you're working in large organizations. And it also it gave me the opportunity to build sort of credibility really, really quickly. So whereas I've been in situations where junior product managers have to build credibility over time, and that's a whole separate process of how to sort of build that sort of authority. But I was able to do it very quickly because there was this content type that was essential to this product launch, but I was the only person with the sort of subject matter expertise, and again that did great things for me in terms of building credibility. On the other hand, it led to me owning this content operations piece indefinitely. So even when sort of the scope of my role had been trimmed down to mainly product management tasks, I was sort of the de facto owner of this operations piece, and that held me back a little bit. When I moved on from this job to the next, I think I felt it a little bit, where I had sort of this shotgun. I was used to sort of this shotgun strategy where I was contributing to a number of different things, and that all sort of culminated in the shipping of the product. And when I switched roles and had to focus a little more, there was a bit of an adjustment on the other side. So bringing in another experience of mine on the opposite side of the spectrum, I had another experience when I was working with essentially a grown-up startup. So it was a company that carved out a niche for itself, another sort of B2B platform, software as a service business. They carved out a niche for themselves. They did very, very well. They achieved a very, very significant market share in their particular markets. And really, my interpretation is there was a lot of sort of behaviors and policies from their startup years that were still in place 17 years into this particular business. So the product management role itself at this company was very, very diffuse, and different stakeholders within the different stakeholders had sort of different interpretations of what the product manager should be responsible for, and that led to quite a bit of sort of give and take in terms of what the product team should focus on. And also, too, this company had very much an all hands-on sort of mentality, which was good in a lot of ways. It meant that everyone worked on everything. There was a lot of transparency into the process. That throughput in terms of just getting things done was sort of on pace nicely. But also, too, it made some of the processes a little kind of lack discipline, if you will, because invariably when you have people working on different things that might sort of fall in and out of their purview, they're going to do things their way, and it led to just sort of a degradation of the process and some lack of continuity, if you will. But anyway, the important part about this role, another sort of notable part about this role, is the fact that we didn't really have the luxury of having separate operations, product marketing. Us as product managers really owned the features that we were shipping end to end. And with the exception of engineering and program management, everything else sort of fell into this role for me. So this is what a typical sort of week looked like for me in this role. So on Monday, I might be spending a lot of time working on sort of standard product management tasks. So writing requirements, looking at analytics and sort of measuring the performance of the different things I was working on, working with users and getting closer to the customer, things like that. Very, very traditional core product management tasks. But I would invariably get pulled into product operations. So this was everything to configuring features, to working, like talking to stakeholders about just sort of the philosophy behind different features. And in this role, what ended up happening essentially is product managers ended up being responsible for everything associated with that feature, right? I even, ended up doing some database work and some coding, because what the mentality was such that, it's your product, it's your feature, you can own as much as you are capable of owning associated with this feature. And this, in this scenario, this sort of expansion of my role really, really led to me not really practicing my core product management skill set, and that is another thing that sort of held me back when I moved on to the next step. Some of the good things about this experience, again, a lot of a lot of control, a lot of authority, a lot of buy-in from stakeholders, because everything I was shipping started and ended in almost every capacity with me. And it also gave me the ability to really sort of engage and understand if I had buy-in, if I didn't have buy-in with my stakeholders, very, very quickly and effectively. And the issue, though, is that I was stuck in sort of this product operations quicksand. I said it's like I can never sort of escape sort of doing some of the mundane tasks associated with product management, and it really wasn't helping me grow. And the other thing is, it really held me back from being a proper sort of advocate for product management, product management best practices and stuff of that. And it led to also sort of like this idea of, well, who's really the owner, right? What stakeholder group really has the authority to make the important decisions that come up on a day-to-day basis? So this was very much an example of what can sort of go wrong when your role as a product manager expands. So when this happens to you, there's a couple of guidelines you can follow to make sure that this is a good experience for you. The first thing is to find the growth opportunity, in this scenario. So it could be that your product marketer, a member of the product marketing team that's been working with you on a new product launch, has moved on abruptly, taken another job. And while they're filling that, you're the one who's, let's say, executing on the product marketing plan that you contributed into. That's a growth opportunity, right? That's going to increase your exposure into the pipeline of the product. It's going to give you the ability to sort of practice product marketing. But this is something where you really have to think about what you want to your career trajectory to look. And when these new responsibilities come to you, think about what you can get out of it in terms of a growth opportunity. Definitely find a growth opportunity in it. Don't just take it on because you're being the good soldier and not saying no and that you're dedicated. Find out what it is that's going to accelerate whatever your career goals are and align that toward your effort. The other thing is, it's a good idea to understand what you're getting yourself into in terms of a time commitment. So set deadlines, or another practical thing that you might be able to do is say, well, sure, I can take this on, but I can devote 5 hours a week to it, or some other fraction of your time that's manageable for all parties. And the other thing is, set clear expectations and deliverables about what you're really making yourself accountable for and what you're taking on in terms of this expanded role. So when you find your growth opportunity, it's important when you're working with the other disciplines to gain proficiency in these other disciplines, but make it very, very clear that I'm not a product marketer. Don't sort of take ownership for the whole discipline. Don't misrepresent yourself, and consult the experts. This is something that I've had actually great results with. So the couple times that I've had to sort of take on tasks either on the program management side or on the product marketing side, I've reached out to my network and said, hey, this is my story. I'm sort of working on this thing now. It isn't product management, but what's your opinion? This is how I'm trying to solve the problem. I consulted the experts whenever I sort of felt that I was sort of brushing up against the what I can contribute from a competency standpoint outside of product management. In determining timelines, a couple of great questions to ask yourself is it possible that I will own this forever? Am I really going to own this forever? How long am I going to be sort of accountable for this? And when when you're sort of in the midst of taking all this on, you're sort of in the weeds with it all, make sure that you plan a transition where you can, right? Set the boundary, make sure that you're not taking on ownership for the entire thing indefinitely. And setting expectations is another part that sort of falls into the whole stakeholder management sort of category as well. But you really have to understand what you're accountable for, and this can sort of play into also some of the diffuse or lack of consistency among stakeholders when it comes to certain roles. So make sure that when you're speaking to everyone, that they're very clear what product marketing or program management might be, and that it's very clear that you're contributing into this and managing these processes. And really make sure that you maintain that sort of alignment. And make sure that you are sort of aligning the strategic input you're putting into sort of these expanded roles and the tactics sort of evenly, right? So that's what's really going to give you sort of the edge and the ability to learn and the ability to be successful when taking on more than just product management. And just to sort of be repetitive, but a really big success I've always had in this department is knowing when to consult the experts. So when I feel uncomfortable or I feel that I'm outside sort of the knowledge I might have in one of the topics, consulting the experts has really, really helped. So a couple of things you can do to just ensure success when you're taking on more is know when to say no, right? It's better to under promise and over deliver than the opposite. When you say no and push back. When I was a junior product manager, I was very hesitant to do that. I really wanted to. I was ambitious. I was excited about the idea of taking on more. But I sort of had to learn how to say no, and sort of not set myself up for failure, not set myself up to sort of be in a pattern where you're just sort of treading water rather than thriving. The other thing too is, again, make sure that you're contributing, but you're not representing yourself as an authority in these other disciplines. Be humble. Be upfront about the fact that you're learning and that you're maintaining and that you're contributing. And the other thing is, when you find yourself where you only have so much time, and then you have your product management sort of tasks you have to take care of, and then everything else, make sure that you're managing your time properly, and that you're aligning that to a couple of things that that I always sort of manage to when I'm taking on more is customer impact, revenue, and strategy. And these could be different in your organization, but make sure that everything you're contributing to is not just sort of in a vacuum and not for its own sake, that it's actually contributing to the vision and the success of the overall product. And another great thing you can do in this scenario is use this as an opportunity to evangelize the product management discipline. Use it as an opportunity to drive sort of that stakeholder alignment. Use it as an opportunity to help define the product management role and really advocate for what product managers do best. And I've always found that does two great things for you. Is number one, again, it helps you build authority and credibility, but it reduces the friction that comes from this initial expansion of the role, and it makes sort of the whole machine operate a little more efficiently. And just a couple notes, on general collaboration and trust guidelines. Avoid sort of this ownership conflict, right? So if you are a member of the product organization, you're contributing into you're contributing into a discipline that might be another sort of lateral organization to you. So again, let's just say product marketing. Don't feel like you have to sort of own either of those disciplines. Focus on product management. Avoid any sort of conflict that might come over ownership, because the other thing is it's important to understand that this is uncomfortable in general. When you're taking on more, you're sort of stepping outside your comfort zone in certain ways. So avoid adding to that by engaging in ownership conflict. But instead, build your appreciation for the disciplines. Understand what they all do well. Understand what happens when all of the disciplines are firing on all cylinders and have the opportunity to do what they do best. And again, make sure that you are always thinking about your user, your customer, your stakeholders over internal sort of squabbling, definitions, friction, anything like that. Make sure at the end, at the end of the day, you're aligning toward the goals that are customer facing. So just a couple of takeaways, just on my experience and some of the guidelines we discussed is, role expansion can do really, really good things for you, and it can also hold you back in different ways. So make sure that when you're taking on the expansion of your role, that it will benefit sort of your growth and it will enable you to build your core product competencies, but it should never come at the expense of building your core product competencies. And you're going to get the most out of this scenario by taking an active role in managing this process and sort of being an advocate for what you want to get out of it. So make sure you're upfront about that. Make sure it's very, very clear that you're taking this on for X amount of time, and or whatever the case may be. Just take an active role in it. Be your own advocate, and know when to say no. Don't take on too much. Don't let yourself drown. But know when you're at capacity, or when you're sort of outside of your comfort zone, outside of your scope of knowledge.
Very cool. We just had a question that came in from Rachel.
Rachel.
Great. I think you had a lot of great guides showing questions that you should be asking, and one of them was, I was wondering about like bleeding the blind situations. So what are good questions to determine, should we go for this and we think we can figure this out together, or wow, we really don't know what we're doing and we just need to get somebody in here that knows better than us? You're on mute.
Mark, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so the short answer to that is, if what you're doing is not really aligning to the goals or the strategy or whatever it is you're marching toward, if you feel yourself sort of stalling or not properly contributing toward what needs to actually be accomplished, then that's sort of the good time to pause and say, what's not right here? Is the fact that we don't have the right sort of representation of the disciplines? Do we need to consult the right expertise? But it's really when everything external, and that's super important to the success of the product, starts to slip, that's the right time to sort of make that call.
Excellent. So I think that's all the questions we have right now. 1 second here. There we go. Oh wait, we just had another one come in. This one's from an anonymous individual, and it's a good question to have at the end. So let me just read it off for you, Mark, first. It's from Sneha Chala. And how important is an MBA for a product manager? And also, how do you identify your forte?
That's a great question. And this is, again, another topic that we could debate sort of endlessly. I've worked with a lot of sort of MBA level product managers. I've worked with a lot of product managers who have also sort of risen up organically or from little disciplines like different disciplines like I have. I think that if you're in I'm going to take a crack at this without sort of rambling on for an hour. But if you're if you have an opportunity to sort of go to business school and that is in line with your goals, and that you really feel like it's the right thing to do in your career, then you should do it. Like, I don't really feel like I don't really subscribe to, it's like, do you need an MBA or not need an MBA? It's a very useful credential, but it's not essential, right? So you really have to think about what you want to get out of your product career. That's not a one-way ticket into a product career, just having the MBA. You're still going to have to find the right opportunities. You're going to have to develop. You're going to have to set goals and stuff like that. So if getting the MBA is what's going to align with those goals and get you where you want to be, then absolutely do it. And if it isn't, then you should really consider, that sort of time and financial investment. And finding your forte, I think it really comes down to what interests you. What sort of, for me, it's what sort of spurs my curiosity. That's how I sort of found my forte, and going back into the presentation of sort of making that transition from user experience and then taking on sort of this quasi sort of product development sort of scenario, and then making the transition there. But really make sure it comes down to what your interests are from a personal standpoint, from an industry standpoint. If you're very interested in the financial industry, that'll take you down one path, or if you're very interested in sort of customer-facing or experiences or mobile, any of the sort of the big verticals when it comes to this discipline. Just sort of go where you think that your passion takes you, because that's going to make you good at it.
Excellent. So cool. So we're going to wrap up now. Thank you to our speaker, Marc Wendell, Director of Product at Frankly Media, for today's discussion of Not My Job, and definitely my favorite talk title I think we've had to date. And as always, the presentation will be posted to our SlideShare channel. And also a big thank you from me, Jeremy Horn, the product guy, and to everyone else who joined us today in the Product Mentor. And also don't forget, if you're interested in being a mentor, like today's speaker, Marc, to help product people of all sorts, all levels of experience, all kinds of industries, please visit theproductmentor.com today and sign up to be a mentor. Session 5 starts on May 1st, and we need a bunch more mentors, so definitely go sign up today. And also, if you're looking to fill a new product job with a great product person, visit our very own free-for-all job board at theproductjobs.com. And with all that said, thanks everybody, and I'll see you guys all next time. Bye.